Hello, everyone. Tonight we'll be discussing listening and empathy. This topic is an interesting one because the word empathy isn't in the Bible, yet an astounding number of biblical commands demand heavily on us learning empathy, like carry one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Galatians 6:2. How do we carry one another's burdens if we can't even really understand one another's burdens? So, listening well, recognizing the emotions of the person who is speaking, feeling alongside him or her, offering wise and appropriate feedback, and seeking to go intentionally deeper is a lot of work. It is, however, work we will desperately need if we want to go beyond the shallows of loving one another. So often we meet up on a Friday night or a Sunday afternoon, hey, how are you? I'm fine. I'm glad to hear it. And when we relate to each other this way, we don't really get to the meat of what loving one another is supposed to be. So part of the reason why we would want to learn listening and empathy is so that we're better able to go about the task of loving one another, of finding out what's going on in the other person's heart. So how do we learn to go deeper in our sharing? It really takes a combination of things like trust, but listening and empathy are pretty key. So, to sharpen our listening and empathy skills, we'll focus on the four F's tonight: focus, feelings, feedback, and find out. So, focus is the intense attention that we pay to the speaker, and it's something you can really see when you look at a person. It's intentionally tuning out distractions and other thoughts. Most of all, it means we limit our own speaking until and unless we have some really thoughtful follow-up questions or insight into what the person has shared. Often, even those really good quality statements can wait. It's always worth it to hear the entirety of what the person has to say first. We show others that we are focusing and where we are focusing by the direction of our eyes, shoulders, and feet. We point with our eyes, where are you looking? We point with our shoulders, where are you facing? And believe it or not, we also point with our feet. When you're talking to someone, you can let them know who's involved in the conversation by how many people are included, by the angle of where your feet are pointing. So these are really like body language-y kinds of ways that we demonstrate focus. How often is it that you're talking to someone and you think you're listening, but you're not sure because they're watching the fly buzz along the ceiling or something like that. So the pointing of our eyes, shoulders, feet, a big way we show focus. So lack of focus is the great love killer in our relationships. Nobody is going to share deeply if it's clear that our focus is divided. Because nothing is worse than showing your authentic self. You say, oh, I really wanted to share this, and your tears running down your face. And people are just like saying, okay, I thought the other conversation was more interesting. That indifference just kills anyone's desire to share. Feelings are the emotions felt by the speaker and those that are stirred up in the listener. So when you are the listener, you have three jobs: understand the emotions of the speaker, which you do not only by listening to his or her words, but also by seeing his or her body language and hearing his or her tone of voice. And in fact, when these things don't match up, you might say, let's see, there must be something going on here. And that would be a great time to ask a follow-up question. Now, recognizing your own feelings in response to what the person is saying, also important. Are you worried for the person? Are you hurt by what the person is sharing? Are you angry because your values are being attacked? Communicating what you are feeling back to the speaker is very important. And that brings us to the third F, feedback. Feedback is the communication you're sending back to the speaker, especially while you are listening. If your heart is feeling compassion for the person, you're going, oh, it's such a painful story, but your face is totally blank. It's really hard for the speaker to know how their words are being received. Even just a simple nod or saying, "Man, I'm so sorry to hear that." Look at how I can't even say that without putting my hand here on my chest, right? Those things would go such a long way in showing the person that they're being heard and understood. body language and tone of voice are at least as important here as what you actually choose to say. And yet we get really caught up in what we should say, don't we? But oftentimes it's how we say it, our body language and our tone of voice, that make a bigger difference. Remember, pay attention to where your eyes, shoulders, and feet are pointing. If the speaker says something especially poignant and you find yourself not knowing what to say in response, usually your best answer is to respond with a summary of how it makes you feel, even if that's just a wow. Just make sure that the person knows, have I been heard? Have I been understood? Are people feeling this, or are they astonished? Do they hate me? And just letting the person know that you are happy or sad or amazed or frightened gives the person a lot of leeway to not feel like they have been missed. And finally, the fourth F, one that I really cannot emphasize this one enough, is to find out. Now, the whole idea of this is if you see a rock in your backyard and you wonder what's under it, you might have your suspicions. You might say, I bet there are millipedes and bugs and earthworms under there. But you won't know for sure until you find out by turning the rock over. Now, if the person you're listening to says something surprising or which hints at something deeper, you might want to bring attention to it and turn over the rock. Why are you trying so badly to avoid going home when your parents are there? What do you feel about your parents? That's a really intense question, isn't it? But it's the kind of question that helps us to really know and understand one another. It's seeing something and saying, I wonder if this is what's going on in the person's life, and asking. That the follow-up question that tries to go one layer deeper in what the person is thinking and feeling. Now, as long as you're focused and respectful of the speaker's feelings, most people will accept at least some of the rocks of their heart being turned over, and both of you might be surprised by what you find out. But what also might happen is that if you hit an area which runs deeper than your trust, and that does happen, the speaker might say that he or she is not willing to discuss it yet. Now, if that happens, let it go. Don't try to push it further. Don't say, but I thought you want. No, let's show respect by not digging further. Trust is outrageously important when it comes to listening. Knowing how much trust you have, knowing how much trust you're willing to give, and the whole reason why we're able to love one another and share with one another is because we agree to respect the trust that's there. So if you try to turn one over and say, well, what's going on with this? And the person goes, oh, I'm not ready to talk about that yet. Let's not push too far. Let's be willing to respect willingness there. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to practice the 4 Fs by getting into smaller groups of 3 or so people to share some meaningful stories. And as each person shares, pay attention to your focus, feedback, and feelings, and make sure to ask some follow-up questions to find out. When all of us have finished, we'll share how we did, and we'll discuss whether it made a difference in the depth of our communication. Let's have great sharing and great listening, and I'll see you all next week.